My name is James Bowden, and I'm going to be chairing this third session this afternoon. I hope you've had a good, relaxing lunch. So for those of you who weren't here earlier on, we're going to unfortunately miss one of the papers that's printed in the programme by Catherine McCormack, who unfortunately can't be here because she's ill. But we're going to run till 3:30.
We're going to run till 3.
Yeah, 3-ish.
Yes.
3-ish. With these two papers, we'll have both papers back to back, and then we'll all have a little bit of discussion together as a room once we're done. So we're going to start with a paper from Marita Fraser, who is an artist, writer, and researcher, and also a lecturer at the Glasgow School of Art.
Hi. Hope you all had a good lunch. A bit of a break, some fresh air. Thank you to the organisers for inviting me. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today. And thank you to all the speakers that are sharing this space with us. Today I'd like to offer a reflection on how some of Carolee Schneemann's text work operate as feminist scores, and the intertwining of this research in my practice. In particular, Parts of a Body House, an epic text published in numerous iterations between 1968 and 72, and A Score of Refusal in the film Kitcher's Last Meal. And thinking about how I approach Carolee Schneemann's work, I offer a reading of it which comes through a method I call speaking with, as a way of thinking through where we position ourselves as researchers, artists, writers, in coming close into conversation with Schneemann's work with care. My work and journey does not happen in isolation, and I'd like to acknowledge the research of others that I have encountered along the way, in particular Dr. Karen DeFranco's work on Carolee Schneemann's Parts of a Body House, and my initial joyful encounter with the thoughtful and rich exhibition and publication, Orgasmic Streaming, Organic Gardening, Electroculture, from the exhibition at Chelsea Space, London in 2008, co-curated by DeFranco with score-loving curator Erin Revell. As it was equal amounts of great excitement and terror that I came upon their research, which aligns so closely with my own, and I hope that this only confirms the importance of looking at the potential that scores offer as creative forms, opening up radical spaces of knowledge then and now. In using the term score, I'm referring to an expanded view onto instructional text works, as noted by Liz Colts in her 2001 essay Post-Cagean Aesthetics and Event Score, that arose as performative art forms and methods in the 1950s New York scene, and embraced by a range of artists and practices through the 60s and 70s, and continues to hold importance in performative, textual, moving image art practices today. Colts identifies John Cage's work, 433 from 1952, as an important moment in the shaping of an event score form, the work 433 being a text notation to performers to remain silent during 3 movements of chance duration, determined duration, and the requirement that the title of the work be renamed to the time of its previous performance duration. And in this period of the 60s and 70s, there was a huge explosion of score-like practices in Western art practices, including lots of Fluxus artists, but a lot of artists outside of Fluxus as well, or stepping into Fluxus and out of Fluxus as favours came and went. But today, we're here for one person, and my focus is on Carolee Schneemann's work. But I wish to acknowledge there's lots more to discuss around scores produced by women through this time as works of radical feminist thinking and making. But those discussions are for another time. Scores are to be read, held as an intention, performed more than once. They are read on the page, out loud, to oneself, to others, with others. They are received through the eye, heard in the ear, perceived through movement. They move across lips, shape tongues, are held in the back of the throat. They are performed in the mind, in the gallery, to camera, in groups, alone. Moving limbs, ideas, hands to paintbrushes, creating new spaces in the body for ideas to arise. It is unclear where the work of a score begins and ends. They are expansive works, enacting off the page of where text is placed with care, producing and reproducing excess through their handling. And it is here in this thought that the potential for scores to enact and inform spaces of radicality might emerge. How do we negotiate proximities within these spaces with you, me, and Carolee today? Carolee's work demands us to come close, very close, for quite challenging conversations, rubbing up against cats, crayon, meat, mouths, bodily extremities, food, ropes, mirrors, imagined internal organs, processes of digestion, text secreted from her vagina. Frottage, as a drawing practice, is rubbing up against. It requires touch to paper resting on its other. Something in hand to make a mark, moving across, a contact and pressure in order to make a shaky handmade rubbing of what's on the paper's reverse. And it is in these thoughts and actions coming close that we converse with Carolee's work. I offer you the remnants of some of my time spent with her work, my research being the shaky graphite dust captured by the raised surface alongside something vital and live adjacent. In a 2017 interview with Anaya Lockwood, one of the editors of the feminist anthology Women's Work, curator Irene Ravel asks Lockwood, "Why an anthology of scores?" Lockwood replies, "We want to publish work with other people that other people could pick up and do." That aspect of it was really important to us. It was live material. You look at a score, you do it. And it is this liveness of scores that is vital in the work of Schneemann. Scores are a way of activating the complex ambitions for her work and body politics, bringing multiple bodies, body parts, body functions, and the taboos into an active space. Works that are messy, moving, pulsing with life. More than just choreographed movement, Schneemann's scores activate feminist bodies of radical transformative politics, of animal welfare, of environmental concern, and her refusal of patriarchal structuring she felt internalized and not so internalized misogyny projected onto her and her work from critics, other artists, and some art institutions. To this end, Carolee Schneemann has produced scores of many registers, including score works that I'm only seeing and encountering for the first time in this current extraordinary exhibition at Barbican. And for me, I had a first encounter with the score-like instructions for this work, which is this newspaper event. This is a terrible photograph that I took on my phone. I was going, oh my God, and it's all getting crammed around. I can't get it, I can't quite get it in and light shining on it. But anyway, there it is. So, yes. For me, this first encounter includes the score-like instructions for fingers, heads, legs, and face performers of her newspaper event of 1963. The fingers score states, if you can read, I think it's a bit out of focus, I'm sorry. "This evening is going to be endless. You're going to be nice to yourself. Don't just move about as others do. Take a rest and make some things which amuse you out of the newspapers. Do not show what you have made. Stay in place. Be in the way. If anyone comes close to you, call to them, 'You dumbass.' Your world remains very private." Score-like instructions are written for the performers of head, legs, face, and other body parts, which are asked to pile up, move, and interact with other bodies, newspapers, in different ways. In this score, there are clear, precise specificities, as well as openings. allowing for the work produced from the score to be different in each iteration of its performance. What is written on the page through its reading produces what we could think of as an excess greater than its textual parts. The score activates body parts in motion, unravelling and reconfiguring through the piling up of some and separation of others. Schneemann's score-like instructions keep the singularity of individual bodies performing normative body roles at bay, the work becoming a collective of collaged body, multiple parts, and in retrospect signposting the way for what was to come in her work. Untitled score in 2 acts. Act 1. In Act 1, we are asking what we are speaking about. Directions to be read aloud by one or many, setting here together. This text is not complete. This text is not fixed. This text is not static. This text is not speaking about a singular voice. This text is not singular. This text is not for single use. This text is not about score as musical notation. This text is missing a beginning, middle, and end. In Parts of the Body House, Carolee Schneemann writes, "Winter night, get into a bathtub which is full of warm water, pine bubbles, with someone you love. Make love in the water. The only light is blue, black night, gold and blue flushes. A cat comes to swim in the tub. It paddles and sneezes, its fur soaked. Then the cat sits on the edge of the tub, watching you in the dark water." A film is made of this. A leap in the dark from an easterly lung, falling briefly, a sudden landing in the heart chamber, cunt chamber. Enormous, soft, velvety, warm, damp walls, rounded, ridged, pulse gently. Your whole body is squeezed up and down between pulses. You can clamber around, holding onto ridges. The nerve-ending room is evolved as free-flowing, self-perpetuating, self-destroying energy environment using active elements of orgasmic streaming, organic gardening, electroculture, birds, acid, joyful technology, extrasensory perception, wildlife preservation, Lenny Bruce, black power. Kidney room. In the kidney, people come together to discuss revolution. This change or transforming political forms, which is repressive, exploitative, devising, or life negative. It's a simple outdoor space. Bracket, a vague sheltering landscape, close bracket, daytime light, a luminescent green bile river runs by. In writing about this text as score, as instructional text, I'm writing into a space of attending to my lack of attention towards the cat, the kid, the washing, time, friendship, bee-loving plants, the use of single-use plastics, and emails not yet written. The writing about score as instructional text is found on a page, a leaf of paper that motivates a person to read the text in their mind, out loud, in a gallery space, on a bus, with a group, a collective, on stage, for camera. To tell, to record, to reenact, to recall, the moment of attention, to attend to the text. In writing this presentation, my eyes move over Carolee Schneemann's Parts of the Body House. My eyes settle on the words, "A cat comes to swim in the tub." My cat comes for some petting or food. Now as my eyes slide along her words describing her heart chamber, cunt chamber, enormous, soft, velvety, warm, damp walls, rounded, ridged, pulse gently, my insides contract and expand, remembering the rising and falling of a child readying to be born. My surprise that in birth she travels up as well as down on her way between bodies. A noise is made on this rising and falling that is best described as extremely loud unhearing. Luminescent green bile illuminates my desire for political change. Carolee Schneemann's Parts of a Body House, 1957 to 67, is a text that asks the reader to spend time with cats, make love, garden organically, discuss revolution, make a film, experience rebirth, amongst other things. It is instructional, descriptive, narrative, and nonlinear. It has been published as text, as poetry, as architecture, with and without images. As a feminist text, it steps between instructional, poetic, performative tone and structure, decentering the authority of Schneemann's voice to include the voice of the body, cats, the reader, and revolution. Schneemann's interest in engaging with the body's personal environmental materiality is presented through a negotiation of our and her personal subjectivity. Whilst the instructional tone of the score is present, its directive tone is one of a collaborative voice, moving away from reproduction of fixed bodies and spaces into a collaborative space between herself and the reader, generated through engaging with bodily rebirth into a radical future. It's a slippery work, being genre and form shifting. In parts of the body house, the house becomes a vessel in which Schneemann and the reader entwine. We, as the reader, are asked to bathe, observe cats, and make films. She moves from bodies, the reader, lover, cat, to vessels of containment, house, bathtub, birth canal, to material outputs, film, organic gardening, a pile of chairs, radical discussions. This movement between things, places, and production requires the reader's engagement in order to act, and it is in this space of engagement between the reader and the page where excess is produced. The text as score becoming a form of practice and a container for more than its parts. In Schneemann's work, the score moves from text to bodies, creating score as body, score as vessel, score as the film of its making. Polyvocal excess of the subjective experience produced through the writing, reading, and doing of the work is created by, as well as contained within, the work's textual form. Within this space of moving through, we hear, observe, make love, and garden. Schneemann engages us in a speaking with through our engagement with her textual body. I would ask, this is a space that isn't fixed, and might this kind of engagement with scores, producing excess and opening up radical spaces, be something that still speaks to our practices today, in creating new kinds of feminist works that can hold an expanded understanding of what it means to work outside in spaces of refusal and radicality. It's interesting, we've come to this work a few times today. I'm showing it as text, I really come to Schneemann's work through text, and so I've chosen to just look at this text because I'm quite interested in how it's positioned just within one particular work. I was going to read it to you, but I think that we kind of know it and see it very well, but what I would like to propose to you is that there's a line in there that's very important, and it's this: I said my film is concerned with diet and digestion. And rolling on from that, I would say that this text, it directly addresses and refuses, as we've discussed really, misogynistic advice on filmmaking, but through a rebuttal located in the artist's body. So Schneemann's refusal of linear structural processes advocates digestion as method, and digestion being a process of ingestion, disintegration, absorption, and excretion. And through the performance of extracting this text, and in its reading and subsequent reproductions, Schneemann's claiming the space of the body as a site of engagement and refusal. She offers the internal body as a site of intellectual inquiry, which is porous and in motion, something at odds with a set of formal visual permutations. The gut, the vagina, and the womb, internal spaces of thinking and making. These internal spaces become expansive, sitting outside of patriarchal thinking, being somewhere excessive as well as intimate, from which feminist creative production is activated. The body is in dialogue with gastric juices and conversations, words, thoughts, poetic and speculative thinking and making, material birthed through conversation. Schneemann refuses to be silenced, making work which connects to the internal body and a persistence of feeling. That's a quote. So this text is a statement of refusal, and it exists as voiceover for the film Kitsch's Last Meal. In it, she places it at the centre of the film's production, and I would argue was the score to the film's making, figuring the cat's diet and digestion as its central concern. Kitcher's last meal becomes a radical sight and work of refusal, the production of each subsequent screening and a reenactment of this score, the voiceover, repeating and insisting, reasoning on digestion as refusal. I noticed that in my writing on refusal, the original sketch for the idea came quickly. A structure thrown down of words in order to capture a rush, a surge, the need to say, wanting to get close to the idea, to capture quickly before it passes. Commit to the idea before it slips away, elusive. Schneemann's call to the body can be understood as more than singular, for the situation of multiple parts, desires, roles, outside of patriarchal thought and control, to be aligned with the animal world in a loving way, alongside organic gardening, electroculture, birds, acid, joyful technology, extrasensory perception, wildlife preservation, black power. Her refusal to internalize misogynistic and patriarchal control over her body and body image, what she makes and how she creates it, her insistence on her body to be knowledgeable within her gut is a radical act that endures, and it is reenacted on each reading of her texts, each unfurling of the scroll, the screening of her film, my hands holding her text, my eyes sliding along her words. And now in the writing, the actual saying, the writing that others will hear, I move slowly, writing and rewriting a word, a sentence, a phrase, paragraph at a time. I don't want this writing to be over. I keep reading and rewriting. I want to stay in this process of arguing for refusal. I want to say exactly how refusing is productive, powerful, meaningful, vital, essential. So, coming back to scores, a leaf of paper pinned to a wall, pasted on a notebook, collated with friends, spoken aloud, performed through refusal, the score of the breath, the heart, digestion and secretion, the film, the performance offers ways of speaking with, listening and being heard in each iteration. It opens up a gap of the page, a gap in which can reside my, Carolee's heart chamber, cunt chamber, political resistance and the potential of a speculative space that is more expansive than its parts. Act 2. Score for sharing space and body. Cast used. You, me, I, he, she, they, and others. In Act 2, we are sharing internal and external space. Setting, here together continues. Director's notes. Place hands on the stomach, make that z sound with the teeth touching, then shape the mouth to create an O sound by opening out the teeth and tongue to make an O. Feel the sound made between the z and the O, and stay in the sound for as long as the breath will allow. Repeat a number of cycles until the inside and outside have moved into each other. Then, when ready, allow quietness to return. Z